And something just fell down behind me.
That's how it is. But we're starting. We're live.
That's
We
right. We
are.
started with a bang.
We're super live. Hello again to Laurie Wallmark.
Hello, Mel. I'm so happy to be back here with you again.
Yeah, no, like we don't have to go through all of the niceties and
Oh, there goes another thing. We'll just listen to things fall down behind me.
you're in New Jersey and things are falling off the wall.
Yes, even
What
without
what
an earthquake.
what am I going to say here in Israel with the war going on?
That's true.
Okay, we'll try and keep things intact during the next 45 minutes or so. So Laurie Wallmark, it's a pleasure to have you back. My best and favorite interviewees, I find good excuses to bring them back. Oh, and I've forgotten. I'm Mel Rosenberg. I am what am I? I am what am I? I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel of the New Books Network. And
You
we
think
are
you would know
back.
that by now?
I know I have the craziest blocks. You wouldn't believe it. And Laurie, so congratulations. You have a zillion billion books coming out this year. I cannot keep track of you. And we're celebrating a book that just came out yesterday.
Tuesday.
What's the day between friends?
That's right.
So another book, and not surprisingly, it's another nonfiction. And not surprisingly, it's unfortunately of a wonderful lady who died tragically. And show us the book, brag, talk about it.
Well, it would help if I had come prepared, wouldn't it? And that's one of the books that fell down. So if you'll excuse me just a moment, I have the book right next to me.
We shall. This is all about spontaneity and about being in the moment, Laurie. And books sometimes fall. It's called gravity.
That they do. Okay, so here it is, Journey to the Stars, Kalpana Chawla, Astronaut. So it's another picture book biography of a woman in STEM. It talks about how she grew up in India, immigrated to the United States, studied here, worked hard, became an astronaut, and up she went.
And this is a unique book because it's co-written. It might be the first book that I know that you've co-written. And picture books are not that often co-written. They're usually written by an author and illustrated by an illustrator or the same person, but you have a threesome going. So
a little menage a trois here.
Oh,
shouldn't say things like that. Okay.
Kids, block your ears. Go ahead.
Let me tell you the story of how this came to be. My co-author, Raakhee Mirchandani, she and I share the same literary agent, and Raakhee writes fiction picture book biographies, but she has always been a big fan of Kalpana Chawla. In fact, she has a big poster of Kalpana Chawla up in her daughter's bedroom, and there were no picture book biographies about her, and Raakhee thought there should be. But she felt that she needed help writing this because this was not her area of expertise. So we knew each other. You know, we'd met several times. Our agent, Liza Fleisig, would help if I got her name correct, put us together. And from there on, we wrote the book.
So whose idea was it to put you together?
I think it probably was Raakhee's because she did know me. But then Liza facilitated it.
So how did you write it together?
I wrote the first draft because that's what I'm used to doing. And then we went back and forth, you know, making changes, putting emphasis here, taking that out, thinking about the back matter. It really is fun co-writing with someone, you know, because other people don't want to hear about your book quite as much as a co-writer might.
So who knows? We might co-write a book together sometime.
You never know.
That would be an interesting one.
I mean, I do have another co-written book that's out on submission right now. So that may be my second one.
It's wonderful. And to what extent is this also a own voices issue?
Well, that is part of it. If someone had come to me out of the blue and said, would you like to write about Kalpana Chawla? I would give two reasons why I wouldn't. One, that I think we need to leave room for people, of different ethnic groups, of different gender, whatever it is, whatever group that person represents, if they're underrepresented. I don't want to take away other people's voices, right? So that's reason one. But reason two, you're not going to get it as well. I mean, you're going to make mistakes writing about another culture. It doesn't matter how much research you do and everything. You watch videos and you read books. It's not the same as having lived that culture. You're going to make mistakes. So if you do write outside your own culture, at a minimum, you do need a sensitivity reader, someone who in that culture who will read through and make sure you haven't made mistakes, you haven't inadvertently done something that casts negative shadow on the person, because you're not familiar with the culture.
So let's mention also the wonderful illustrator.
Okay, so as is usual, I have never met the illustrator, but I think she did a great job. The publisher did ask us our opinion about illustrators, but again, I didn't feel like I was qualified to give an opinion about an Indian illustrator, right? Illustrating Indian things. So I left that to my co-author, Raakhee, and to the publisher to figure that out.
And the publisher, we should mention Beaming Books.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So Mazel Tov on this new release. And my goodness, in July you had two books come out like a week from each other.
Right, 2 weeks from each other. That was a trip.
That was the trip. What does a publisher say when they discovered you have two books coming out the same month?
They obviously would prefer that it not happen, but I had 3 books come out last year. There's just so much time in a year. And it's not that the 3 books sold all in the same year. Books take different amount of times, especially picture books, to be published because they have to find an illustrator. So, they just sort of came up against each other, and that's just the way it happened. It makes life very interesting for those few weeks in there.
So let's talk about those two books just briefly, even though we mentioned them. You have a reputation as being the lady, the world's leading lady of writing STEM biographies of dead ladies.
Right.
And Judit Polgár is very much alive. It's a lovely book. In our last conversation, you said that it was a scientific book, but I mean, you're the author, you can say whatever you like, but as the reader,
Sure.
my reader response was not so much. It's a great biography about a very, very interesting story of a family, and a young girl from the age of 5 has this overriding ambition to be a world chess hero.
Right. The reason I still feel I can call it a math book, and you're right, I can do anything I want. In
So
the
can
back
I.
matter, in the back matter, I include how chess and math are connected. So that the story itself really doesn't have math in it, it has chess in it. Then you go to the back matter to see how mathematical chess really is.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, but I mean, like the book doesn't have, she opened the Sicilian defense and so on, and
Right.
and I would venture that's why it's such a gorgeous book. Do you have it anywhere without upsetting the apple cart? The illustrations are just
Let's
so
see.
marvelous.
I can just take another one down and then we'll have more things fall.
Yeah, take everything down.
Why not?
So this one was published by Little B and illustrated by Stevie Lewis.
Beautifully
What?
illustrated.
Yeah,
Look at that cover.
Laurie is gorgeous. Show another double spread for the people who are and for everybody else. Run out and buy Laurie's books. They're gorgeous. It's just a labor of love.
Right.
And I love it. And last time we talked mostly about the Rivka's Presence,
Right.
which was published by Random House Studio, a super gorgeous book.
I have been incredibly lucky with the illustrators they've chosen for my books. Just so lucky.
And isn't it interesting? You spend years laboring over a picture book, and as authors, we know the secret that it's basically we build the framework for the illustrator. That's what we do. And if we're lucky, we get a really spectacular illustrator. The publisher picks the illustrator. And then we have two choices, either to fall in love with the illustrations or not.
Well, I'm additionally lucky that I don't have an inner picture of what the illustration should look like. That's just not the way my brain works. So what the illustrator decides to put in the pictures is always going to be interesting and new for me. And then, of course, the luck that the illustrators are very talented. But a lot of people, they have such a strong image of what the illustration is going to be that even if it's the most beautiful pictures, if it doesn't match, they're unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
So luckily, I don't have that disconnect.
Do you want to hear my theory?
Sure.
Are you just saying that, or you actually want to hear my
theory?
No,
no, I really do.
Okay. Well, I think it's like having a baby.
Okay. From your vast experience of having a baby. Yes, go on.
Well, guys also sort of have babies. I mean, to the extent that we're there in the delivery room and
right. You become a parent.
Yeah, and become a parent. And here's the thing, you don't really choose, unless you're adopting a child, you don't choose the way the baby looks. And yet you love the baby. Our first son was a daughter. Back, in the days when there wasn't the
right, when you didn't know.
Testing. Yeah, and we were sure from the ultrasound that we were having a son, and planning the breed, the date of the circumcision and everything, and out pops the most wonderful daughter in the world, but a daughter, and it's just you love it automatically, and I think that there is something, and it goes to what you're saying, that if you don't have an expectation and you haven't wrote a million art notes or illustrator
right.
notes, the stove has a red pot on it and it's simmering, that leaves you with the ability, just like you don't say, God, I want my baby to look like this or that. And you're not going to say, oh, that's the way she looks. No, I don't want her.
Right.
leave her in the hospital. So that's my theory, that wonderful authors like you are going to love the illustrations because you just love the illustrations.
Yes. And the illustrations always bring an extra layer to the text. There's always something in the illustration that, as the author, we didn't think of that they put in there.
That's because you have given space for the illustrator to own the book.
I once did a manuscript critique, and it was of a picture book. And she was so detailed. The grandmother had gray curls and had this and that. And then in the back matter, she talked about how the story was based on her own family. I have no idea whatever happened with this story, but I venture to say it never got published, because if you have that strict an interpretation of what the story is, that it has to match the reality of your family, you don't leave room for story.
Because it has to match the reality of the illustrator's family. I've interviewed authors where it turns out that the illustrator has illustrated his own family, and it comes out wonderful.
That's fine. But as the author, if we say that, then the illustrator has no room.
Exactly. So we've celebrated your wonderful oeuvre. I want to go back to one book of yours from 2021, I think it is, the Dino book. Try not to bring a wall down as you show it to us.
No, this one, this is the one that caused the initial things falling down from the wall. I took this one down right before we started to talk. Then, 2 minutes later, whoomp, another minute, whoomp. Anyway, this is Dino Pajama Party.
Laura, this is the dinosaurs getting their revenge on you, you see.
Absolutely. And because this was my first fiction book, I had people ask, is it nonfiction? I'm like, sure, paleontologists found bits of pajamas on dinosaur bones. No, it's not nonfiction. But they were so used to me writing nonfiction that it was hard to make that change. And there's another one with just gorgeous pictures.
Yes, Michael Robertson. Wow.
Yes.
And I love this book. And I love it even more. I'm going to ask you to read some of it, please.
Sure. Okay. And it's much, much shorter, of course, than any of my other books. It makes it much easier to read.
Parents love that.
Yes. I can never get to it. Okay. And it's in rhyme. It's for littles. Dinos rock and dinos roll. Dinos stomp and dinos stroll. Okay, so here we have them stomping and strolling. All the dinos on the beat boogie to that funky beat. I'm going to read one more page and then skip to the end. Dinos roar and dinos shriek, dinos boom and dinos squeak. Right, so they continue partying. They're dancing and they're playing instruments and they're partying. And working my way towards the end. Even a short book, you don't want to hear the whole thing. Dancing dinos sure have fun, jiving neath the setting sun. Right, so it's getting nighttime. Dinos yawn and dinos drag, dinos droop and dinos sag. Dino toes are getting sore. All the dinos leave the floor. The poor one dino holding onto his toe. No more rocking out today. Sleepy dinos trudge away. Right, so it's getting darker. It's a bedtime story.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to calm down from the partying, calm the kids down. Snug in bed, they dance no more. Here they are in bed.
I love this. I love this. I love this page.
And then the final page is fast asleep, the dinos snore.
And the illustrator or the editor split that into two spreads. It's so beautiful.
Right.
So one of the great things in picture books is what they call reader response, that I'm allowed to read in whatever I want to. And once in a while, I get to ask the author if that's what they meant. So I see this, Laurie, as a metaphor for the extinction of the dinosaurs. That they like danced themselves into oblivion. I'm not sure whether you meant that.
No, probably the asteroid hitting the Earth had a little more to do with it than them dancing themselves into oblivion.
No, metaphorically speaking.
But what's nice about this, which is true of most little kid books, is, when you're reading it to a kid, dino stomp, everyone stomped, right? Dino squeak. It's really fun to read with kids because they can do what the dinos are doing.
So last time we talked about something that I learned from a professor whose name I can't remember, that the historical characters can become real over time, in a sense. We talked about the reality of Alice in Wonderland, the reality of Moses, Nobody can prove that Moses ever existed,
Right.
but he's become real, over the 3,000 years of the Jewish religion. And I really believe that when you write your book about Rivka, and Rivka is a conglomerate of your Bobbe and your mom and
Right.
whoever, but for me, Rivka comes to life in this story, and she becomes real in a sense.
Well, and that's true. I always talk about my little Rivka or my Rivkala
Yeah,
rather
but
than
now
say my book Rivka's story.
yeah, and so now we're going to segue into the issue. But the Dino book, and you have another hippo book coming out. Is that a secret, or everybody knows?
Well, it's not a secret now.
Oy vey. No, but you mentioned it when we talked.
Right. I must have mentioned that I had sold that one, but it hasn't been announced or anything yet. So we're not going to say where it's coming from, when it's coming, just that it's on the horizon.
Hippos squelch and hippos belch. We're not going to mention a word of it.
Exactly.
Oy vey. Sorry. But yeah, I remember we talked about it.
Well, otherwise, how would you know about it?
Exactly. However, what I know about. So and look how much fun you're having talking about the dinos. And the dinos book is completely fiction.
Yes, as is the hippos.
No, we're not talking about the hippos. The hippos is not fiction, doesn't exist yet. And so I said, okay, you're the person to speak to, especially we're both scientists, about this conundrum about so-called nonfiction. I know I'm going to get into trouble now. I'm going to get into trouble with you and Melissa Stewart, who's been on the show, and I'm going to get into trouble with Jen and a whole bunch of other people, two Jennifers. First of all, the word nonfiction, it's funny. It isn't fiction. Why don't you call it true?
And one of the questions I get very often from kids when I do school visits is this true? Did the person really exist? And I try to remember to say it up front because to them, it's a story. They don't know it's true. But yes, that's a good point that it should just be called true stuff. Right? Not true stuff and true stuff.
But here's the thing. Even your nonfiction stories, where you've taken the pains to make sure that the authors don't say anything they were never quoted as saying, or never did anything they were never documented as saying, it's still one part of the truth, and the illustrations are not the truth. And isn't everything a story?
Certainly the illustrators have more leeway. They can put the character in a situation that the character might not have been in that exact location, with the hill here and whatever. But yet, back to Journey to the Stars, when I was going through the illustrations, to check them and give comments about them, get to the right page here. Oh, almost there. There we go. Okay. She's on the International Space Station, is what it looked like originally, but she isn't. She's on a space shuttle. So when the illustrator originally drew the picture, it was the wrong picture. So, it was fine that you have all these things floating around. I had no problem with that. But the background that she had was wrong. It was for the International Space Station, not the space shuttle. So in that way, the illustrations still do need to have a basis in truth. If you're writing about a time period and the illustrators have to do research on the time period, you can't have things, anachronistic things in the pictures. So it's a combination of not literary license, artistic license, but grounded in fact.
One of the clever things that you do in your books, in my opinion, is you don't write the science. And one of the people I had on the show commented that her first book, which is like a science nonfiction for children, is outdated. Science becomes outdated.
Right.
And I had when I was a youngster, I'm older than you, and I had a book in the 50s about Mars, and probably everything about that book is wrong. And
Right.
and I can't find that book. I wish I had it. And the canals and and it makes you think that the I don't know how to say it. When you write your biographies, they're going to be timeless. If you teach science, what are you going to teach? There's 130 elements now. 25 years from now, there'll be 150.
Well, I can put science in, but it's clearly the science of her time. So it doesn't become dated like a science book saying this is the truth for now and evermore. If the person discovers something, she still discovered it, even though it may change later on. Because you're right, science evolves.
So my next question is why? I think it's really good to have nonfiction, fiction, historical fiction, informational nonfiction, fantastical, historical,
Science fiction.
aberrational, science fictional fiction, as long as the story is good.
Yes. I'm working on a new biography right now, and I just sent it to my critique group, and I sent it with the comment, I think this is too science-y. And they agree, because they are not science people and their eyes glazed over. And the story got lost because it was too science-y. I can take some of that science, put it in the back matter so it's still there, simplify it in the text, because you still need to know what the person did. You can't just say, oh, she was an important scientist. Guess what she did? But I can simplify it to keep that story.
Most of what we do as scientists is turns out to be, I wouldn't say wrong, but it gets dated with time.
Like I said, evolving. I think about things like you, science stuff from when I was a kid, that it's wrong.
So why are you still so passionate about writing biographies? We talked about the importance of passion, and I grant you that, but you're so gifted with writing fiction, and you're gifted with rhyme and meter. And I know you're going to shoot me for this.
Maybe.
Which is, I'm crazy about your fiction.
And I like the fiction too. I think what happened is because the first book that I wrote, Ada Byron Lovelace and the Thinking Machine, I am not going to, it's on the floor. It's no longer, oh no, there it is. But I'm not going to pick it up because we know disaster will continue to happen if I do. I wanted to write a book that had math in it. And I had some fiction book, or tried some fiction books with math, and that didn't work. And then I wrote Ada, who was a mathematician, and that did work. So that was my first book. Well, that worked. So let's write about another computer scientist, Grace Hopper, Queen of Computer Code. Yeah, she is definitely on the floor. She's gone. Sorry, Grace.
And on National Computer Day too.
That's right, World Computer Day. Today is World Computer Day, a day to celebrate all things computer. And poor Grace is, the world's.
She's on the floor.
Right, the person who popularized software engineering, on the floor. The person who taught computers to understand language that we could understand instead of 1 and 0s, on the floor. Oh well. Right, so I wrote that second one. First of all, my field was computer science, right? So now I had 2. I was on a roll. And so you sort of get into that same groove. It's what people expect, which makes it actually harder than to sell the fiction, because, oh, this is nice, but how about her nonfiction? Why don't you send us one of her?
So what happened what happened with the fiction? You found a wonderful agent by showing up late. Actually, you didn't show up at all.
Right.
And people who want the full disclosure should look in the previous interview. And you have this wonderful agents, Liza and Ginger, and
Right.
you're on a roll with the nonfiction. How did you pop this on them, ladies? What do you say to my? How did this happen?
I think I must have just sent it in with no explanation. Here's the next thing for you to look at. What do you think?
And what did they think?
Well,
It,
this
it,
is different.
it was the Dino book first or Rivka's book
The
first?
Dino book came out first.
And what did they say?
Like I said, well, this is different. We'll give it a try. And that's all you can do in this crazy publishing world is give it a try. You throw enough spaghetti against the wall, some of it sticks.
And after, so now that you've been able to break out of this, I wouldn't say, what should we call this? The
Well, looks
brand,
like stay in your lane.
the branding of Laurie Wallmark.
Right.
And you've been cross-branded now.
Well, I once took a webinar on branding, and I knew the people giving it, so I emailed them ahead of time. And what is my brand? And they said, your brand is you write children's books. I said, okay, I can accept that. I mean, I still love picture book biographies. Like I say, I have one out on submission right now. I'm working on another one, but I do love the fiction too. And I do love poetry. I do love writing in rhyme. That's just so much fun.
It's great fun, but you have to have a sense of rhythm.
I used to play drums as a kid. And
I
then I
knew
played
it.
bass,
I knew
fiddle.
it, you see.
And so the rhythm part actually comes naturally to me.
I knew you were a scientist. You were also a musician.
I was saying I was a musician, might be pushing the envelope, but I played piano, I played drums, I played bass fiddle, I played guitar, so yeah. I guess I was a musician too.
You see? So, and this is what I teach my students. I tell them, look, if you can't sing what you're writing.
Oh, and I've been in a chorus. I have been in a chorus for many years. I'm not in it right now, but probably 10 or 15 years I was in a community chorus.
So I'm going to ask you to do, I don't know, you probably say avocado, but I'm going to ask you to go back to your dinosaur book and sing a bit of it.
And sing it?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. We take from the middle where we haven't heard, so at least you're hearing different things.
Okay.
Let's see. Dinos plink and dinos strum, dinos toot and dinos drum. This is why I'm not singing anymore.
I thought that was splendid.
I'll give you one more page of singing. I mean, they were tooting and strumming, so it seemed appropriate. Dinos come from all around just to play that rocking sound. They all are coming down the road.
So I think that the next step here is to turn this into a song.
I think I may enlist the aid of some friends of mine who are actually songwriters if I were to do that. Though as a kid, I did write songs.
I'm not surprised either.
I wrote the melody and I wrote the words.
So I'm going to challenge you for the next time we get together.
Uh-oh.
To put a tune to this. And the chorus.
I'll see what I can do.
Dinosaur, dinosaur, more and more and more and more, piling onto the ballroom floor.
And their feet are sore. Going to the store.
You see? And
joining the Marine Corps. I mean, you can go like this on, I like this all day.
people are watching though.
Uh,
But so I'm just gonna, this was a marvelous interview because I think that I'm looking for people that will agree with me that it's not so much what you write about. You said it last time, and I love what you said. Write to your passion, write to your heart.
right.
Hope that you're lucky and that you're on a trend, which you said that you were with the bios.
I just read something that talked about writing rules, and one of them has always been write what you know. Well, that rule came about when it was much more difficult to find out information. You know, now I'm working on something that has bugs in it. You know, what sound does this bug make? I don't know. I'll just go to the computer and find out.
Yeah, but and what would happen if you invented the sound, you see?
Well, that's it.
Uh,
And what I really want is that, you know,
no, I know, I know. But you
yeah,
see,
you're right. It could be any sound, you know.
it's not like this is really why we're talking today, because there's two Lauries. You see, there's the Laurie that wants to get everything right. You know, Hedy Lamarr never said, "Oh, I'm going to be late for this meeting, so it's not going to be in the book," even though it might be really a good joke or something or segue to something. And then there's the Laurie Wallmark, who writes about a pajama party of dinosaurs, right? Which, as far as I know, as a scientist, has little connection with reality.
Okay, so the first Laurie Wallmark, when I was in grade school, I would get a note on my report card that said, Laurie tends to be a perfectionist. So you're right, that's the first Laurie that it's got to be right, it's got to be correct, the grammar has to be correct, you know.
And people, you see, people are composite and they're complicated. So if I were writing a biography of you and I talked about, Laurie Wallmark, the scientist, and then I left out Laurie Wallmark, the musician. So it would be nonfiction and it would be true, but it wouldn't be you.
And that, in a nutshell, is the difficulty in writing picture book biographies.
Exactly, which is why I shy away from it. And then I look at the other Laurie, which, the other Laurie has in her heart a place for Michigas.
Absolutely. And even knows what it means.
For sure. And don't let the Wallmark
right.
deceive you here. You're a Shana Maidela from way back. So
you got it.
I want to share with you one thing. I don't know if I've ever said this on the show. When I was 4 or 5 years old, I got pissed off at the world. My dad used to read to me every night. And I had 2 books about Peter Pan. And they each had a different illustrator. And Laurie, I remember it drove me mad.
Right. Which does he really look like?
And I would say, yeah, exactly. I say to Dad, which is the real Peter Pan? Dad probably had a good laugh. He was an engineer.
I was going to say, but that's why you were a scientist too, because that's the way, as scientists, we think. We want to know. We're curious. What is this difference? What does it mean?
Yes. Well, we're not going to interview me now. Except to say that after a career of being a scientist for 30 years, I went back to what I really wanted to, which is write children's books. And I don't really write about science in my picture books. But that's when I become famous like you and somebody interviews me. Laurie, so what haven't we covered? We've celebrated your brand new book. We've talked about your recent oeuvre. We've talked about things that are coming out that we shouldn't talk about. And we agreed too much that at the end of the day, it's the story in the picture book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction or whatever label as human beings we want to tag on the book or tag on you as an author.
You know what we didn't get into that maybe we will another time is how true does nonfiction have to be? You know, how much can you push that envelope a little bit and still claim that it's nonfiction? Or how about something that's nonfiction but has, you know, like a little ant in the corner telling the story, right? So obviously the ant is not nonfiction, but everything the ant is saying is nonfiction.
So I mean, we'll have another interview, but in the meantime, let's talk about this for a couple of minutes, because this is how I write nonfiction, is I will have an ant in the corner talking about it. But I don't say that it's nonfiction.
Most people would call that informational fiction.
Yeah, but my question to you is, who cares what other people call it?
Because the librarians
If
have to put it somewhere in the library.
Okay, because
And the
okay, hold on.
booksellers have to put it somewhere in the store. That's why
Yeah.
it's important.
Okay, but you know, Betsy Bird, who was on the show, she now has new categories for informational nonfiction,
Right.
and people are coming around. So there's going to be new categories, because when you write a story that's being told by an ant, and not an ant that's your uncle's wife,
Right.
uh, and nobody's going to say that this is strict nonfiction.
But that's actually a very important point, that
But
if
is
it
the
is
story good? Is the
clear,
story fun?
right, if it is clear whether it's fiction or nonfiction, then you're fine. You know, in the ant talking, it's very clear. It's when authors, let's take the dialogue situation, put in dialogue, then as a reader, I will assume, since it's nonfiction, as a reader, I will assume the person really said that in that situation to that person. And that's where you get into trouble. The person may have really have said it. You know, I have in several of my books, we have quotations as part of the illustration. The person really said it, but I don't know what was then said back to her. I can't have a dialogue because I might know what she said, but not what the other person said.
But you could put in a dialogue and say this is historical nonfiction.
Sure. Well,
You know,
except I call it historical fiction, or it's that blurry line. And
I always get those confused.
well, and again, you know, Laurie tends to be a perfectionist, right? I have not outgrown that. So it would drive me nuts to put something in there that wasn't absolutely true to the best of my knowledge.
Except in the dinosaur book.
Except in the dinosaur book.
And this is what I tell my students, that in fiction, everything is kosher except for the truth. You know, but between us, okay, when you're writing, and I understand you, and it's okay, when you're writing nonfiction, you're trying to give a picture of a singular truth.
Yes.
But you don't get to create a universe. You see, in your book about Rivka's presence, you created a universe in the
But I
dinos.
created a universe based in truth. Right. So it wasn't a completely made up universe. You know, the tenements really existed.
Go to the dinosaurs.
Right, the dinosaurs, not so much truth. Like not at all.
And kids love that. The kids must love that book.
Yeah. Hey, I love fiction too. There is nothing wrong with fiction at all. I mean, most of what I read is fiction.
So I mean, this has been a great conversation, and I expected maybe we would argue more, and we didn't.
I must have been having an off day.
No, I think it was wonderful.
Well, that I didn't argue more is what I'm saying.
So it's mostly about following your passion, because passions lead us, and maybe angst also.
Why not?
The angst to be perfect, the angst to be this, that, to write terrific stories. And I think that's the challenge. Let the librarians put them in categories. Not that I don't love librarians, but that's I'm not sure that's our job. Our job is to write really good stories.
I will agree with you with that, but as a professional author who wants her books to be published, you do have to think of other things. You can't just write whatever the heck you want if you want your book to be traditionally published. You know, there's that a little bit you have to think about what people are buying. Would they be willing to buy this and publish it? Doesn't mean you shouldn't write it. You can write whatever you want. But if you want to write to be published, you have to think about other things.
Okay, that's going to be good food for our next conversation because we're not going to agree on that too much.
There you go.
No, it's okay. It's okay to have a market. Oh, I had this wonderful conversation with Charlotte Offsay about this, and we're not.
Who has wonderful books, by the way.
She has, but you know, there's some people can say, "Give me a subject, okay? I want a picture book about sausage." And some people will sit down and they'll write a fantastic story about sausage, right? I won't. Because you're telling me to write a story about sausage.
I'm afraid we have to agree again. That could I write about sausage? Sure. Would it be any good? Nope.
So we keep agreeing. This has to stop somewhere.
I know.
So Laurie,
you thought you were gonna get me there, but nope.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna congratulate you. Hold up your brand new book, co-author, brand new book, Journey to the Stars. Kalpana Chawla, Astronaut. I probably mispronounced your name because I'm not on Voices. Written by Laurie Wallmark and the wonderful
Raakhee Mirchandani.
There you go. I'm going to let you pronounce her family name.
Right. Except when we get to the illustrator, I am not sure. Maitreyi Ghosh? I should have found out.
Go for next time.
Exactly.
Laurie Wallmark, it's been wonderful having you back. Congratulations on your new books, and we cannot wait for the next one, which has some chubby animal. We're not gonna say that it's
coming out at some point. As always, it's a pleasure, Mel.
And we'll have you back. So I'm Mel Rosenberg, and I am the host. See, I'm getting it right this time. I'm the host of the Children's Literature Channel, the New Books Network, and I've been here with the wonderful, exciting, terrific, international award-winning author, Laurie Wallmark.
Who's also very modest, of course.
You are. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.